Okay, so let's get right into it. There's this huge new trade deal between India and the United States that's got everyone talking. Now, on the surface, it looked like a pretty straightforward economic win. But, as you're about to see, the real story is, well, it's a whole lot more complicated.
The big number that grabbed all the headlines was this one, a massive cut in U.S. tariffs on key Indian goods. We're talking from a staggering 50% all the way down to 18%. For Indian exporters, this was supposed to be a total game changer.
And, both governments were quick to celebrate. The official line was crystal clear. This is a win-win, a fantastic deal that really strengthens the economic ties between the two countries.
But then, after all the press releases and the victory laps, people started asking, okay, where are the actual details? And as that fine print started to leak out, a much more controversial picture began to take shape.
So first, let's just break down what was publicly announced. This is the version of the deal that everyone saw in the news, the part that was celebrated.
For these key Indian export sectors, we're talking textiles, leather goods, artisan products, slashing that tariff down to 18% promised way more access to the giant U.S. market. It was seen as this huge boost for manufacturing and jobs back home.
But here's the twist. The most important part of this whole deal, it wasn't really about textiles or shoes. It was about oil. And this is exactly where the official story and the reality really start to pull apart.
You see, that drop from 50% to 18%, it wasn't a simple cut. Not at all. It came with a huge string attached, and that string connects directly to India's relationship with another major world power, Russia.
Turns out that original 50% tariff wasn't just a standard tariff. It actually included this special 25% penalty. Why? It was imposed specifically because India had been buying a ton of discounted oil from Russia. So here's how the math actually works. It's not like they just knocked 32 points off. First, the U.S. agreed to remove that 25% Russian oil penalty. That alone brought the tariff down to a base of 25%. Then, they negotiated that remaining base rate down to 18%.
But, and this is the critical part, a separate letter from the White House made it crystal clear that the U.S. will be actively monitoring India. And if India is caught buying Russian oil again, either directly or indirectly, the U.S. has the right to immediately slap that 25% penalty right back on.
Which leaves us with a really crucial question hanging over this whole thing. Is the new tariff really 18%? Or is it actually 43%, that's 18 plus the 25% penalty, the second India decides to buy oil from Russia again?
And the complexity doesn't stop with oil. Let's switch gears and unpack how this deal handles another super sensitive area, agriculture.
For years, one of the biggest hurdles in any trade talks has been America wanting to get into India's massive agricultural market. So, to protect its millions of small farmers, India came up with this really clever bypass for American farm goods.
And you can see that strategy right here. The deal lets in U.S. goods that don't really threaten the heart of India's farm economy, things like animal feed or almonds. But it explicitly keeps out the really sensitive stuff, like vegetables, dairy products, and staple grains, which protects Indian farmers from direct competition. Pretty smart.
Beyond just the tariffs, the deal also sets this really ambitious goal. It's not legally binding, but the aim is to more than double the trade between the two countries to $500 billion by 2030, covering everything from energy to airplanes.
So, as you can probably guess, when the news about the Russian oil condition got out back in India, it immediately kicked off a massive political firestorm.
And the opposition? Well, they did not hold back. They basically framed the deal not as a negotiation, but as a total surrender of India's independent foreign policy. The argument was that the country had just buckled under American pressure.
So you've really got two completely different ways of looking at this. On one side, people are saying India gave up its sovereignty by letting the U.S. dictate its oil purchases. On the other side, the government's saying, look, this was a practical choice to protect a vital trade relationship that brings in billions of dollars.
But in the middle of all this controversy, some sharp-eyed observers noticed a really surprising detail buried in the official U.S. announcement, something that actually looked like a huge and totally unexpected diplomatic win for India.
Get this. For what looks like the first time ever in an official document like this, the map used by the U.S. showed India's complete official borders.
This included disputed territories, which is a big deal because it seems to be an implicit backing of India's territorial claims, a pretty significant shift from normal U.S. policy.
Okay, so when you put all these complicated, sometimes contradictory pieces together, what are we supposed to make of this deal? What's the final takeaway?
Well, it's pretty clearly a deal of massive trade-offs, right? On one hand, it secures a crucial flow of U.S. dollars into the economy. On the other, it seems to trade away a little bit of foreign policy independence. It opens markets, but does it in a way that cleverly shields its own farmers.
And that leaves us with the big question. Is this a masterclass in economic pragmatism, just a smart move to keep the economy stable in a chaotic world, or has a dangerous new line been crossed, where a country's trade benefits are now directly tied to its foreign policy choices, all under the watchful eye of another global power?